Alright y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Now today's video is going to be a recommendation that I was getting a lot on my raid on Saint Nazaire video. So y'all are saying how the raid on Saint Nazaire or Operation Chariot was a big part of British history, especially during World War II. So you're recommending another big raid, particularly Operation Frankton or the Cockleshell Heroes. Now from my understanding, from what I've looked up, this operation was meant to be 6 teams of 2 men deploying from a submarine on canoes, but they sort of looked more like modern day kayaks. But they were meant to deploy on these canoes, paddle, I think maybe it's supposed to be 10 miles or something like that, and it placed bombs to blow up German ships in France. Now, it ended up taking, I think, 4 or 5 days total to actually do this operation just because of all the stuff that was sort of going against them. And only 5 teams ended up deploying. And I can see why it's very important because it definitely was a big sacrifice because only 2 members of the original 10 that actually left the submarine and went out, only 2 members actually survived. So it's important to definitely remember those sacrifices. And this video is pretty good because it's talking about a commemorative event or memorial event where it sort of gives background on what they did, sort of how they prepared for it and everything. And it's also talking about a memorial that they dedicated to them. So, but I just wanted to give some background, so we'll check the video and we'll see what y'all think.
By Lord Mountbatten as the most courageous and imaginative commando raid of World War II. The Cockleshell Heroes were a secret team of Royal Marines from Portsmouth who blew up enemy shipping in France. There's no public memorial to them in Britain, but nearly 70 years after they launched their daring canoe attack, a memorial has today been unveiled near Bordeaux. Well, our reporter Steve Humphrey is live for us in Bordeaux this evening at the memorial. Steve.
Yes, Sally, hello from southwestern France. This memorial has been built just a stone's throw from where those Royal Marine Commandos began their mission to attack German shipping just down the river in Bordeaux harbour. Today the memorial was unveiled at a very special ceremony on this very spot, and amongst the people who were here were many of the relatives of the commandos who took part in what was known as Operation Frankton back in 1942.
So in the United States, you can pretty much go to any city or town and find some sort of memorial for, Vietnam or World War II veterans or what have you. So you sort of take for granted that those are there, and people actually go and visit those because people have a close relationship with, possibly someone who served in those wars. So it's awesome that even though it took 70 years for them to actually get their own memorial. And it's also cool that they're able to do it in Bordeaux because, like they're saying, they left from the Bordeaux harbor. So it's nice that you can go and look at the memorial and sort of get a better feel of what they actually went through or what they were sort of looking at when they were departing on their mission back in 1942. So you can definitely feel a closer connection when the memorial itself is in a location that's pertinent to what it's sort of talking about. So that's awesome that they were able to finally get that.
Also here was the first Sea Lord and Lord Paddy Ashdown, himself a former Royal Marine. Nearly 70 years on, what happened back in 1942 is still acting as an inspiration to many people. On the banks of the River Hamble, members of the Royal Marine Volunteer Cadet Corps have been recreating a flavour of what happened in December 1942. The cadet unit is based in Portsmouth, the city where the Cockleshell Heroes trained for their daring mission. Some of the cadets have even canoed down the Gironde River in France to get a sense of what the commandos went through.
What the people actually went through was amazing, really. Trying to do it all at night and not being hard. And during the day was a lot tougher. Obviously we had to be careful of the tide and things like that, but they just kept going all the way through it. It's absolutely remarkable.
The Cockleshell Heroes.
So that's awesome. I know, at least in the U.S. military, we do a lot of events to commemorate sort of things that have happened in the past, whether it be something that a Medal of Honor recipient did or something that prisoners of war had to go through. So here in Korea, we have the Bataan Death March. There's a few memorials for that. So it's nice to have these events because you can have people who either participated in it or family members come and talk in the event, and it gives a much better appreciation. And actually doing the thing yourself, just it gives you a better connection and appreciation for what people went through than just reading it. And he did mention that they were doing it at night, so it gives you an even better appreciation because you can imagine sort of the stress and anxiety that they were actually going through, trying to remain undetected and doing all of this at night. And it would weigh heavily on your mind, especially because the fact that they were trying to, every hour, they would only take 5-minute rest while they were doing this. So you can imagine if you've ever gone kayaking or canoeing, just doing it for an hour straight is brutal, not including all the equipment that they actually had and them trying to remain stealthy somewhat. So having to do that for an hour and only getting 5 minutes of rest is going to be very brutal. And they did that for multiple days straight against waves that were sometimes 2 meters high. So yeah, you can imagine it was definitely rough. So it's good to sort of read about it and do it yourself to get a good appreciation.
Heroes had to canoe 75 miles through enemy-held territory, paddling during the night and hiding during the day. Their objective, to blow up German ships in Bordeaux using limpet mines.
It was recognized as something that was amazingly brave. It was a suicide mission. The chances of getting out were going to be very, very slim.
The raiding party became known as the Cockleshell Heroes because their canoes were officially known as Cockle Mark IIs. They trained for months to prepare for their top-secret mission.
From Southsea we used to go round to Langston Harbour and those places, canoe all the way around and back again at night.
Norman Colley is the only man closely involved in the operation who's still alive.
Yeah, so I read about Colley. Originally, he was supposed to be 13 members on the operation, and Colley was the 13th member. He was the reserve member. So he ended up staying in the submarine when they actually left. So you can imagine how heavily it must weigh on his mind that he had to say goodbye to his friends for the last time back in 1942. So I'm sure, if anyone can appreciate that they finally got a memorial, it would be him.
He was the reserve team member, and he travelled to France on HMS Tuna, the submarine that took the commandos to the mouth of the Gironde River.
Very queer feeling when you see them going away and you know there's not much hope. Very queer feeling altogether.
5 canoes set off, but just 2 made it all the way to the docks in Bordeaux. Using their limpet mines, they caused explosions that damaged 5 ships.
And again, you can imagine how much it actually meant for them to prepare for months for an operation that's like they probably knew they weren't going to return from. It takes a whole lot of guts to prepare for months and stay committed to something that you might not return from, or you probably won't return from. And there was a lot of stuff going against them. One of the waves ended up capsizing one of their canoes, and they ended up evading capture for that team ended up evading capture for 4 days until they were given up to I think it was the German police. And with 2 ships making it to the actual ports and placing their bombs, you can imagine how heavy it must feel for them to realize all their buddies got captured and they just happened to be the ones that were able to make it there. And I think of the 2 canoes that ended up placing their mines, only one of the teams ended up making it to France and then to Spain. So it was only those 2 that ended up surviving this whole ordeal, which you can only imagine how much it must weigh on their minds for them to all be so committed to this and they be the only 2 survivors.
But after the heroism came the sacrifice. Of the 10 Royal Marines involved, 2 died from hypothermia, while 6 were captured and executed by the Germans.
You expect to be prisoners of war, you don't expect to be shot for something like that. You're in uniform. It didn't work like that. Hitler's orders, commandos had to be shot.
The only pair to make it back to Britain were the unit's commander, Major Blondie Hasler, and his canoeing partner, Bill Sparks. In 1983, they placed wreaths at the memorial to the Cockleshell Heroes at the Royal Marines base in Poole. In the dark days of 1942, the commando raid had shown people in Britain that the armed forces could strike deep in the heart of occupied Europe. Well, amongst the relatives who were here in France today was Tom Hasler. Now, he's the son of Major Blondie Hasler, who led the raid back in 1942.
I think it's a really fitting memorial for all of the people involved in the raid, the canoeists, also the submarine crew, and of course all the French people who helped them during the escape. So very fitting, great day.
Also here today was Jimmy Sparks. He's the brother of Commando Bill Sparks.
It's very, very emotional, and at the same time, you know, everybody's happy, and to think that all these people have turned out, and with this memorial, you know, I mean, it's, what can you say about it? It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, this memorial has been built of stone from Portland in Dorset. It's cost about £100,000. It is a fitting memorial to the Cockleshell Heroes. From France, back to you in the studio.
Yeah, so, well, $100,000 memorial, really that's nothing. You can't weigh that against the sacrifices of all these men. So it is literally the least that they could do. And you had the son of the commander who actually ended up surviving. You can imagine being the commander and being in charge of all these men, and you being one of two to actually make it back. That must be super rough to try and, you know, just wrap your head around. So I'm sure he's told his son a lot about the people that actually took part. So it's nice that they're able to actually still get that appreciation. It's nice that he was able to go and look at that memorial being unveiled and sort of tell the stories that his father has probably told him. And then you also had the brother of Sparks, who was the other survivor. And you can imagine, even if they didn't talk about it directly, if you're that close to someone, being their son or their brother, you can sort of see how much it means to them to sort of think about these individuals and the sacrifices they've made. So they can definitely get a good appreciation for what it meant to their relatives. Definitely a story that we should continue to tell. Even in the United States, we sort of have gotten away from just remembering, because there's so much stuff going on. You sort of get lost in the commotion, and you only have these certain individuals who had a close relation with the people who actually went through these sort of events. So it's nice to get this exposure, even if it's not directly, whether it's through a YouTube video or what have you, or seeing a memorial. You can definitely get a good appreciation for the sacrifices that they've actually done. Again, I wouldn't have seen this video if it weren't for y'all. So I do appreciate the recommendation. It's nice to get this exposure out here. It's nice to get exposed to these sacrifices and sort of help to shed awareness for what they've actually gone through. So I do appreciate the recommendation. It does mean a lot to me to be able to do that. But if you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing to be a part of the team. And yeah, you can get the same exposure that I'm getting through these awesome recommendations. But again, feel free to comment. I do appreciate it. I love reading y'all's comments and replying to it. So that is it for this video. I will see y'all in the next one.